Good afternoon, my friends. Welcome to our New Testament challenge. Today I'll be sharing with you some thoughts and reflections from the 14th chapter of the Gospel of Mark. We're getting close to the end of the story, and so things are fast and furious in the 14th chapter. A lot going on right now, and let's kind of look into it. So at the beginning of the chapter, 2 days before the Passover and the Festival of the Unleavened Bread, the chief priests and the scribes were looking for ways to kill Jesus by stealth. And they said, not during the festival, or there would be a riot among the people. And then he was at a house of Simon the leper. He sat at a table. This woman came and had an expensive jar of alabaster jar with costly ointment. She broke it and poured the ointment on his head. And there were some that says, "Oh, why did she waste that? She could have sold it, and we could have given the money to the poor." And Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Don't question her motive. She has performed a good service for me." And she said, "You will always have the poor with you, and you can show kindness to them whenever you wish, but you will not always have me with you." And so some people have mistaken that statement as to say we don't need to worry about the poor. No, that's not what it means. What Jesus is saying is that you will always have the opportunity, and you should always take the opportunity to help the poor. But there will be times when, particularly this time, when you should be doing something else. When she came to honor him, really to prepare his body for burial, and he says, don't be self-righteous. Don't be, he understood, the reasoning behind it, the thinking behind what they said. They weren't really so much worried about helping the poor as to, their motives weren't pure, in other words. So after that, Judas, who in other places we find out he was kind of the treasurer, and this is one of the differences in one of the other gospels. It's Judas that's the one that's demanding, that is saying, why did you waste that money? Why did you waste that? You could have sold it to the poor. And so he was upset, and so he finally goes, he meets with the chief priest in order to betray him. And when they heard it, they were greatly pleased and promised to give him money. Again, in Mark, we don't know how much. Matthew, it's 30 pieces of silver. In other places it is, but in Mark, we don't know. We just know that Judas has agreed to betray Jesus. The next day, all right, so keep this, on the first day of the unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed, he sent two of them into the city, and he said, prepare a room for us to receive the Passover meal. A little side note, there is a room in Jerusalem that is historically known. Again, you don't know for certain, but it is said that is the upper room. And so I have had the opportunity, the pleasure of being in that room where Jesus supposedly shared the Passover with his disciples. It was an incredible experience. And then here, while he's sitting there, he talks about, one of you is going to betray me. And so everybody gets upset, and they all ask him, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And he says, one of you who's dipping this bread in the bowl with me is the one going to betray me, and woe be unto him that makes that decision. And then, while they were eating, he took the loaf of bread and said, "This is my body." He took the cup, and "This is my blood." And so he does it's the institution of the Lord's Supper. Although here, in Mark, it is very, very short. Other Gospels, it's a little more expanded, and we get a little more detail. And so after they had sung the hymn, they went out onto the Mount of Olives, and Jesus tells them, "You'll all desert me. And for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I'm raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Remember that. But Peter says, "Oh, even if everyone else deserts, I will never do it." I just love old Peter. And Jesus says, "No, Peter, even you Before the cock crows twice, you will have denied me 3 times. And so then when they went to Gethsemane, the garden, and he said to his disciples, he took with him Peter and James and John, and he began to be distressed and agitated. And he wanted, he says, Abba, Father, you know all things are possible. Can you remove this cup? Yet not what I want, but you want. And he went back, and Peter, James, and John were asleep. And he did that 3 times, and they were still sleeping. And finally he says, all right, that's enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. My betrayer is at hand. Well, as he was speaking, Judas arrived, and there were a crowd with swords and clubs. And Judas had told him, the one who I kiss is the rabbi. You need to arrest him. And so when he did that, they grabbed him, and one of the disciples had a sword and reached out and cut off the ear, struck the slave of the high priest. And Jesus said, why do you come now and arrest me? You've had all sorts of opportunities in the temple. So he was calling them out on their stealth, on all that. But let the scripture be fulfilled. And then all the disciples scattered and left. Now, here's a verse in 51, which only Mark shows, and it's just a funny verse, that it would be added in this very difficult time. And it says, a certain young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth, and they caught hold of him. But he left the linen cloth, and he ran off naked. So I guess that's something that people remembered. Don't know why, but it's just kind of weird. Just out of nowhere, this very human description comes in there. So then they take Jesus to the high priest, and they try to grill him and talk to him and ask him all sorts of questions. He wouldn't say anything. And finally, he says, they ask him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? And he says, I am. And he says, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming with clouds on heaven. And then the high priest says, tore his clothes and says, he has blasphemed out of his own mouth. There's no other need for a trial. And so the guards began to beat him and spit on him and strike him. And in the midst of all that, immediately goes there, and we hear the story of Peter denying Jesus 3 times. And then when he heard the cock crow the second time, he broke down and wept. And so a lot of action in this chapter, a lot of stuff going on, and it's building up to the final. It seems like everything is falling apart. All of the disciples have scattered. Peter has denied. Judas has betrayed. Jesus has been convicted, and it doesn't get any darker than this. But we know, as the old sermon said, it's Friday, but Sundays are coming. We know it's going to get better. So hang in there, my friends. Hopefully this has been helpful, and we'll talk to you again.